net carb is all-around protective to your domestic poultry. Suitable to house various small animals, including chickens, ducks. Okay, I'm gonna get this engine on this stand. This is actually going to be a kind of a quick one, so let's get into it. The reason I say this is going to be a little bit different, and it should be a quick one, is because it's kind of just like an investigation for a guy. It's a friend of mine. I've done a lot of work for him in the past. He rides his bikes and values them being done right and reliable. So because of some suspicious goo he found in his oil tank, he wants the trap done. It's a fairly low miles bike, but it had like a really tacky kind of tar in the oil tank, and that makes him just a little nervous. So like I said, he really rides his stuff a lot and values everything done right, and so because of that, come on, you know, he just wants it looked after. It's kind of one of those deals where the money just isn't really a factor in, you know, where he places his value and importance, I guess would be the best way to say it. So he asked if I could do it a while back, and I've kind of got like a perfect little window. He's been in line, so it'll work out really well, I think. But what I'll do is I'll pull the primary part, I'll pull the trans out, I'll pull the timing apart, and then once we're at that stage, then I'll take it back out of the stand, and then we will get into that. We are also going to put H-beam rods in it. We're going to do some of the Hepalite ones, and then I think we'll throw in some new pistons. I don't know if his bore is worn. I have his head and cylinder. Those will be separate. But we're either going to just go with a new set of pistons, we'll match up the cylinder, or if it is worn enough, we'll go with an oversized. So that will kind of be determined later. But we're not doing any aesthetic changes. I don't need to vapor blast it. It's just going to be kind of disassemble, inspection, bearings and seals, and get that Sludge trap kind of figured out. Longer videos don't do very well. I feel like they just kind of get full of a lot of fluff. So because of that, I'm trying to kind of make what's important shown. Pulling covers is not important. So I'm going to get all these posi drives out. Okay, so I've got the timing cover off. I also have started, I got all the screws out of this. I just have a couple nuts left. Talked about this in the past. Make yourself a little guide template. I am reusing this hardware, so just to make sure everything goes in the right spots. A lot of it was already missing because the guy who pulled the engine for the owner started kind of disassembling just to make it lighter for himself. So he ended up pulling a couple of the screws. No big deal, just mark those out. First thing you want to do when you pop the cover off is I always check this spindle. This will get loose, kind of becomes a issue. But check that, then just kind of visually look it over. This obviously looks really good. I'm going to go ahead and pull the pump. Okay, so I'm going to pull the pump. I think we're going to reuse this pump. Again, this bike doesn't have a ton of miles on it. I'll inspect it, make sure everything looks good about it. I don't think it needs a Morgo swap, but we will check it out to make sure. At the very least, you could do like balls and springs to freshen it up. But like I said, overall, it probably doesn't need to be replaced. So what we're going to do as a cheat, I'm not going to use my special locking tool. I want to show the alternative option. I'm going to take an extension, and we're going to find a balance hole in this crank that's deep. That one's very deep. And that's going to hold our crank in place. We're not going to hammer on it or anything, so it doesn't matter. It's not going to bash against it and damage anything. But we want to hold the crank because we want to take the pinion off first. This is standard threads. Hopefully it's not on here crazy, and we can do it without me getting too carried away. Ah, there it goes. Okay, sometimes you have to shock it. I don't like using impacts, but I guess a hammer bashing your wrench is good enough. We're gonna take that nut off and set it to the side. Then you're gonna get out your tools because you bought all your special tools because you're a good Triumph owner and you wanna do the job right. So you bought all the right tools. So we're gonna pull our idler out of the way for now. We're gonna put our special tool on. We're gonna get a good bite on the back side of the timing pinion. And make sure you're fully seated back there. You don't wanna miss one of the teeth. And sometimes it does take a little bit of finessing to get it to kind of seat behind there, but you want all three. There we go. That's what we needed. So now it's snuck in kind of behind. Now that that's engaged and we still have our extension holding the crank, we can run this in. Now we can pull the timing pinion gear nicely. If you are building your engine, start by buying good tools. That is worth the money right out the gate. Okay, so now that we have our pinion off, what we can do is use that as our locking tool. So then that way we're not bashing around with that the whole time. So you can actually stick this up here in these gears, and that's going to hold those cams in place. So kind of a cool little trick. These are both left-hand threads, and so we need our seam here. We're actually going to go the other way now. I don't feel bad hitting this ratchet with a hammer because it's just a Harbor Freight one. But now, if you look, these two gears are now locked together, and it's holding our exhaust cam in place. So that's kind of a little trick to this. Again, once you get it kind of shocked, it really just likes to come. And then we'll do the same thing to the intake cam. So now that we've got both of those off, now you're gonna get your other special tool you bought, which is the cam remover. These are threaded here, and you can thread this tool on, and then it will, cam gear remover, sorry. It will allow you to pull your cam gear, which, hold on. I got excited and got ahead of myself. I actually like to remove the exhaust first because that is what holds us in place. Or the intake is what holds us in place. So you're going to take your adapter, which is this little safety tool here. That actually will prevent you from mushrooming out the end. That taper is important. The taper on the inside of the tool will deform the taper on the cam, and you need that taper to be good because that's where your points go in. So you got to make sure you use your little adapter tool here. Now we're going to thread onto this. And we're going to remove this one first. I'm glad I forgot to do this one first so I could talk about why it's important to do the exhaust first. But so now that that one's off, we're going to be good to go, and these are still going to hold each other in place for when we do the intake. That's why you want to do it in that order. All right. So now that those gears are off, our timing is disassembled. We want to go in and grab all these cam keys and then that key down there. So we're going to stop on there. Now we're going to get this trans disassembled. Unfortunately, or fortunately, the primary's already been pulled. So we aren't going to be doing that. He wanted it to be lighter for himself to remove it from the frame. So last week's video had a 4-speed in it, so we're not going to do 4-speed either. We'll do disassembly, but I'm not going to show you guys reassembly. You know, we're just going to focus on a few things here and there with this one. But either way, we got to get this transmission apart. Okay, so we got all the hardware holding this cover on, off, out, and same thing you always do, kind of, you can give it some taps. Now you have 2 spindles and 2 studs and, you know, whatever, and probably a locating dowel or 2. Oh, there we go. That's holding in place. So kind of be patient with it. Kind of hoping there would be a little less gear oil in there than that, but okay, so we've got our spring caught on the cover, but the spindle stayed. There we go. So we're gonna rewind that anyway. Right off the bat, you kind of want to look and see what's going on. Again, everything looks great. The shift paws look great. I mean, yeah, it's really not that bad. The material's not really that metallic, so just a little bit of metal in there. But yeah, just quick glance, not bad. So we'll set this to the side. First thing we're gonna do is knock this tab down. I got my chisel here. So flatten it out. Now, in order to get this backed off, we're in neutral right now. I'm going to shift it into gear, and then I've got a vice grip, big open mouth, holding that rear sprocket. Oh my god, it was loose. Alright, didn't need to hit anything. Cool. So we'll inspect these components. They look great. But sometimes you'll get in here and these teeth will be chewed. That tooth's not looking so hot. We might consider changing that out. I'll look at that a little closer later, but everything you touch, just look at it when you got it in your hand. Don't forget that shim that goes in behind there. It goes shim, spring, shim, spring, gear, ratchet, and then your outer washer and nut. These videos will make you look like an amateur hour if you aren't careful. I think I'm always prepared and I just quick grab what I need, but grab the wrong thing. But there's a Phillips head screw down here. Get that out. And then you got your Allen head here. And then there's a hex head bolt down below. So you got one of each. You got an Allen, a Phillips, and a bolt. I'm hoping this camera is not wiggling too much. I am making a more stout stand for it, so hopefully that does help in the future, but it is what it is. I actually considered getting a chest mount too. It'd look really silly, but it'd be a cool perspective. 2 washers. 2 for 1. If one's good, two's better, right? Again, everything looks great, just as you'd expect. They weren't having any issues, so there's no reason to think that there's going to be something wrong, but I can tell you what, this pen grade gear oil, I mean, this stuff is thick. It is like in every gear, like it's holding on. That's amazing how much that's the viscosity. But you can go ahead and just start pulling components out at this point. Ooh, she's stuck. Now, I can't remember if this is the year range that exposes the backside of it. If that's the case, we should be able to tap on it. But let's jump over to getting that sprocket window off, and we can see it from the other side. So these little flat blades can be kind of a pain in the ass sometimes. Sometimes they come out really easy. just make sure you get a blade in there that fits really, really, really well, and then that way you're not jumping out. And you know, a lot of guys will just grab their random Stanley flat blade and shove it in there, and it's just going to ramp right out. So you want something that's really squared off, a machine's, you know, driver for machine screws, not something that was intended to hang a picture on the wall. So just make sure you got the right tool, and it really doesn't mess them up too bad. They are a very soft screw, don't get me wrong. Like, I've had quite a few spin on me. But that being said, my go-to is usually a really large, well, you want to start like a little pilot in the center, but then I use a really large diameter drill bit and just drill off the entire head really cleanly. That way you don't damage your window, your sprocket cover. And then once that's off, then you can just pull the cover, and then you get like, I don't know, a little 1/8 inch tip that you can put vice grips on. You heat it all up, you know, get that aluminum warmed up, and it'll let go of that steel screw. But usually that's the best way. I mean, you could also get carried away and do an easy out. I've done that, but it's just way faster to drill the head off, you know, clean with the cover, and then grab onto it. But like I said, a lot of times they do just want to come out like this, as long as you get a really, really positive engagement on there. And then these are usually stuck on pretty good. Pry against the sprocket, and they usually pop off. Okay, let's take the sprocket off. Okay, that's out of the way. Like I said, this may not be all that tight. A lot of times these are loose, to be honest. Not that bad. I don't like hitting this one because I don't really like this vice grip hammering against the case. You know, pressure is scary enough to push on that, but you know, if you do have to get your electric impact out and zip this off, that's totally cool. But I found most of the time they're loose, which is why that tab washer is important. And then sometimes they don't want to come off, and you have to actually use those 2-threaded holes for a puller. But again, a lot of times they're also loose, so they're, you know, they're all different. Okay, now we can actually get on that positively, and I can tap it out. I'm not going to get too carried away, but I just need to shock it so it comes out. There we go. Boom. Okay. Now we can come back around here. Get our soaked rag there. Pull that bad boy out, which is going to let these forks come loose. Pull those gears out. Be careful not to lose our little roller. Okay, roller stayed on, so we're going to make sure we fish that out and it doesn't get lost. Hopefully this is a good angle. Actually, I might get you guys closer. Keep pulling all the parts out. Still didn't get that roller. The roller gets stuck in there. We're going to flip this around, check that. That spindle's still nice and tight. This track looks great. There's no hammer spots. There's nowhere where this roller's been bashing. Doesn't really have any wear. There's no raised edge on the lip. The line where the detent's following isn't deep, you know, just a nice little shiny spot. And it's actually tracking fairly centered too, which is awesome. So everything about that trans looks great. So we're good so far on all of our components. Our hard parts, we're not And again, this is I don't know what word to use. It's not abnormal, I guess. It's, you know, something I encourage a lot of people to do. If you don't know the history of a bike, you know, getting into it isn't a bad thing. You're not hurting it. You know, if anything, knowing more about your internals will, you know, make you a better bike owner. But you know, getting eyes on it and knowing that, hey, cool, I can go jam on this thing and put some miles on it, and I don't need to be worried or concerned. So, you know, it seems daunting, it seems scary, but at the end of the day, it's really not that hard. All right, well, I wasn't really prepared for this one. I keep complimenting on this engine being, oh yeah, it's in good shape, but we've got a bit of an issue. Can't wait to figure out what's going on there. Anyway, I'm going to keep getting this thing apart, and I'll let you know as soon as we get there. But the other thing I wanted to show you was down in these like little cracks and crevices and back behind here and stuff, I found more of what, you know, had made this initial teardown happen. It's this weird, tacky, like almost like silicone kind of. It looks like glue. I don't know what that is, but there was a ton of this in the oil tank. And now we've just found some in the little cracks and stuff down in here. I'm assuming there's going to be some on this side. And the fear is that that's inside the crank. So this is why I'm in here, is because of this weird little gluey goo. I don't know what it is, but it's pretty nasty stuff. And like I said, it's just extremely sticky. So the other thing is this crank is stuck in the timing side, which is totally normal, and I actually have to talk to a lot of people about this, so I'm going to show you how to get it out. So I'm going to kind of clean up my mess here, and I need to make sure those are protecting, but I'm going to get all this oil out of the way so I'm not dealing with it, and then I'll show you how to remove the crank out of that timing side. Two things. One, I promised I would show you knocking this out, so I'm going to. But the other one, I actually just got off the phone with Dan for our weekly, well, used to be weekly. Now we're both kind of busy. But anyway, had a nice little chat with Dan, and he kind of talked me off the ledge with the whole bushing issue. I've dealt with this before, but I never really realized what was going on. And we had a long sintered bronze conversation and interferences and all that kind of stuff. And it's left me very hopeful. So anyway, less worried on this whole issue here. So that's cool. Anyway, on to this. The timing side is tight on the crank, which is awesome. That's what we want. The timing side bearing is also tight in the case. Another bonus. So that being said, there's many different ways these come out. I've had luck where me just holding it and giving it a few wraps, it drops right out. Other times I will have to suspend it over, like, you know, a barrel or something, and then actually heat it to let go. So we are going to try first by just doing it by hand, which means I'm going to hover it about an inch off the table, and I'm just going to hit it. And if you're careful, it won't be very violent. But yeah, so anyway, that's the first thing to try, because usually it works. Hopefully that didn't look, you know, exaggerated. Nothing gets hurt. It's totally safe. Just don't let it fall on the ground, obviously. And make sure that your rods aren't going to get hung up and bent or anything. So that is the easiest way to do that. Now that we've got that out, we can see where here this will work. We've got some more of that goo stuff. So there's some there. I'll add it to the pile wherever it went. But there's some down in here around the vent. There's, you know, just a little bit right there. But we're going to still proceed with the crank search. I'm going to I'll pull rods. I'll mark the rods. Always mark your rods so they go back where they came from. I'll mark the rods, pull them, and then get that trap out. Still haven't decided what I'm going to spend the most time on in this because, again, if I make them too long, nobody watches them. Maybe we'll do the sludge trap pulling because that's all we're doing. I don't plan on grinding this crank. It should measure out just fine, but we will double check it. But maybe we'll just talk about that sludge trap removal and go in depth on that instead. So. I'm just going to set these rods to the side for now. Obviously, if we were going to reuse them, we would check the big ends, and then they would get new small end bushings and ARP rod bolts. But like I said, these will just go in his parts pile. They do seem to be a good set of rods, so they would be nice as a replacement set. Shells don't look too bad at all. Nothing too crazy. Same with that side. Nothing crazy. I'm gonna get a rag on these and then we will measure them. Oh yeah. Just under 624. Looks like about 7/10. 24 on the money on that side, so which is, again, we always talk about that. Timing side should always measure fat because it's direct pressure, and then the drive side's a little bit, lesser, just further down the line. But these are both in-spec, they look great. I will just give them the lightest polish, but first we need to get the trap out and get this thing like all cleaned up, because my polishing belt will burn the oil on it. So let's see how stubborn this sludge tube's gonna be. Now, nobody's been in this before, and it's peened from the factory right here on the end of the slot. And so what I like to do is either use a center drill and see if that will relieve the peen, or if that doesn't do it, I will go in with a carbide and just kind of sit there and tap at it until it's all cleaned up. Once you've removed all of the deformed or moved material that's in the way, usually these slots like to just come out. So I'm gonna try and do it with the center drill first, just because it's less invasive, and then if we have to, we'll get the die grinder on it. Okay, so I'm not really happy with the way it's cleaning up, so I'm just going to go ahead and touch it a couple times with the die grinder. Okay, that should be good enough. The roller bearing is getting replaced, so I'm just going to use it as a sacrificial kind of what to grab onto while we beat on this plug. So I like to use one of those hammer impacts, and it seems to work really good. I've tried to do just like a standard impact, but the problem is it just wants to jump out of that slot super bad. So this kind of drives it in and spins at the same time, which makes it way easier. Okay, so we're already moving. Now, usually what I like to do is if I do get it to move, I will immediately get out of the hammer just because we don't really need that shocking anymore. And I will just try and spin this with either a breaker bar or a big T-handle or something. So we'll try this big T-handle first. Not bad, not bad. So really isn't too difficult. If it did fight me anymore, sometimes I will get a little bit of heat involved, and then if it feels like that's still not going to take care of it, then I will just go ahead and drill and put I have a huge easy out. Whoo! Okay guys, this was definitely worth it. Okay, I know this isn't really going to focus all that well. That's close, but I'm going to try and get some angles on this so you guys can see. There's quite a bit of that gooey shit in there. Let's see if I can't grab some. Oh, yes. Do you see what it's like? Silicone tar. I don't know what to call this, but look at that. Look how sticky and stringy it is. Ugh. Ooh, whoa. There's like hard spots in it too. Okay, so there's a kind of more like traditional sludge, because like usually it's more like chalky, like tar, but then it's just intermixed with this glue. I wish I could get it to, yeah, look how it strings. Look at that webby, stringy shit. Gross. Okay, cool. Okay, now we are going to remove the trap. So I'm going to pull this flywheel or get it loose. If it doesn't want to come out easily, we'll put the bolt back in, and then I'll get my tap started in it. But sometimes they want to just come out, so we'll try that first. Forget I said anything, we definitely need to use the tap. Okay, so the trap's spinning. Sometimes if you just pull up on it, there we go. You probably can't see that, but one of the things I get really concerned about is like, okay, let's say this bike sat for like a really long time, but it's still low miles and all that kind of stuff. What can happen is like, if you look, a lot of the sludge that is in there is like really hard. Like some of it's like big rocks, like flakes like this. And what happens is when you put new oil into the old, like petrified sludge, is it like starts to reanimate and break back apart. Now you got all these like hard little bits, and that can break loose in little teeny tiny pieces, and then they'll get sent out into your bearings and starts to eat away at your bearings, and then you'll get all this scoring, and it's a real mess. So, you know, putting fresh oil into something that's been sitting for a really long time can actually cause more problems, because it just kind of rehydrates all this, and then it just turns into like a way gnarlier mess. It's the other reason why when I see people talk about just pumping solvent down through the timing end, that's just making, you know, the same situation. You're creating a more mobile garbage. And so yeah, you really only have one solution to know you've done the right thing of protecting your engine, is getting in here and actually cleaning it out. So all right, I just hit it with a belt really quick, gave it a quick polish. Looks really good. The trap is cleaned out. Really happy with how well it scrubbed. Used like half a bottle of brake parts cleaner on this thing, and I don't think we got to talk about these yet on this channel, but the new Hepalite H-beams. Some of you would probably recognize them if you know your H-beams well. They're essentially something else. Yeah, so just Hepalite's name on them. We already know what to do with these, as we've done a lot of steel 4340 forged connecting rods before. Same deal though. Stretch on the bolt is still going to be about 5.5. You can go to 6, but 5.5 to 6. It does walk you through if you just want to use a torque wrench, but again, we like to stretch them, so comes with a little bit of moly paste there, and then obviously the 2 rods. There's really not much to say, because again, if you know other rods that already exist, you know exactly what these are. So they just happen to have a different name on them, Hepalite on them, but good packaging. I'm going to go ahead and get these ready to go, check them out, and get them installed. You've seen me do it a million times. We've talked about sludge tubes. Check them, make sure there's no burrs, clean them out. They usually have a little bit of machining garbage left inside them. And we're using a hex head plug, so Same routine as always, 33 foot-pounds on the flywheel bolt, and this thing will be ready to go. So I'm gonna get the rods on. I got the Molly bearings, so I'll get these all cleaned up, and they're standard obviously. So we will fit those into the rods, get the rods on, bolts stretched, and then we'll get this thing back together. So okay, so we wanted to talk about that cam bushing issue we had. After talking to Dan, and it kind of all made sense, but these are sintered bronze, and so it's like chunks of bronze all mushed together to create what it is, which means there's a lot of inconsistencies with like the final sizing, which can cause for inconsistencies in fitment in the case. So the fact that this is a soft material, it did not destroy the aluminum. So the aluminum is still in good shape. It's, you know, smooth, no galling. It's not oversized or anything like that. And so a new bushing is going to fit in there nice and tightly. And so, like I said, it was a little, I had a little bit of a panic for a second. But now that it all makes sense, you know, and it's like, oh, okay, cool. So, nothing's wrong with the cam. The cam's fine. The old bushing came off quite easily, but it fits on here beautifully. And so I'm going to then warm this up a little bit, and then I'll press this bushing in, and then we'll check it for sizing. We'll double check it with the line ream to make sure everything's going to be nice and true when we do bolt it together, because I am changing this one bushing. But thankfully, you know, this bushing kind of did its job. It took all the abuse. The oil obviously did its job. It took a lot of the abuse. So it's just inconsistent sizing with fitment, interference, and everything like that. So not a huge deal. So that's actually very exciting. Like I said, I had a little bit of a panic. Okay, so got the new one, case warmed up, new one pressed in, and now I'm just kind of double checking with the ream here, and it's actually really lined up well enough. Obviously, anytime you change one side, the other side's going to be effective, or if you did like a full cam bushing set, you're definitely going to need to line ream them. But either way, everything's looking really good. Really happy with how that came out. It went in really tight, which is super encouraging. Also made sure to get the oil hole lined up. Something else that will save you a lot of headaches, anytime you have a variable, anything new changing, check it before you get deep. We just put a new bushing in here. We just line reamed it. We want to make sure that it worked out. So I've got some bolts back in the cases, and then you want to make sure that spins freely. You know, you could have just, oh, it's line reamed, it's good to go, let's move on. Then all of a sudden you're halfway through bolting it all back together, you got all this stuff going on, and something's not working right, everything's binding up, whatever, because you didn't check this and find out that, oh, something wasn't quite perfect. I guess in the grand scheme it doesn't matter because nobody really watches all the way to the end. I mean, some of you guys do, obviously, but I can see where it falls off there at the end. So hopefully the beginning, middle of this video was enough content to make it worthwhile. The end of the week ended up being like crazy because I had my mini bike races during Baxter Cycles Rally. So I was like scrambling to get this engine kind of finished up. So it is done as far as I'm taking it. Again, we talked about there was no primary in it when I got it. I don't have the hardware to put the top end on. So what did end up happening was I checked the cylinders. We had talked about those. And when I first got it, I thought there was a chance that they just were going to need new rings. You know, it's like everything looked decent, and obviously the client was very optimistic about that. They were horrible. They were like 9 thousandths clearance, so, you know, 4 thousandths more than it was supposed to have, 5 thousandths more than it was supposed to have, really. But I did end up taking them to 20. So these are bored at 20 over. You know, I didn't paint them or anything, kind of trying to keep that original look because it's an original paint bike, all that kind of stuff. And then, here, let me turn you around. We'll look at the head. Got the head all done up. I don't remember how much we talked about with that, but overall it's a pretty decent head. The rocker box holes were in good shape. I did have to time cert that plug there, but new guides. I went with 2 overs because the standards were pretty loose, and then black diamond valves, 30, 45, 60 on the seats, and then dressed the surface there. I have a little bit of a mark left from my washer that I used there, but so, you know, kind of typical stuff there. Nothing too special. They did want the top end blasted. It shouldn't stand out too bad because obviously I don't have that like over the top shine that other people get. So once this thing is ran for a little while, it'll start to look, you know, original again. But I do have the rocker boxes to go with it too, so they all match. That whole top end will be kind of same tone. But yeah, it's done. I'm happy with how it turned out. You know, it was a quick one. You know, mostly just getting that cam bushing fixed was kind of the biggest hurdle we had, and at the end of the day, that actually went really well. So, decent engine. You know, 20 over H beams. You know, all the good stuff. I did put a Morgo in it. So it does have a Morgo oil pump now. That was the other kind of upgrade, but otherwise, you know, it's a good bike, or good engine, I should say. But this one's done. I'm gonna get it off the stand, and hopefully, Dude Man comes and gets it, and then I can jump on to something else. But yeah, I'm trying to get more and more polished on the ending of these videos, or you know, actually, you know, start and finish something to completion. But this week was just really screwed up. I did get some video of the mini bike races, and I will get that edited and uploaded. It'll be a short one, but just kind of fun to show what that looked like. So